Yankee, Hotel, Foxtrot, Yankee, Hotel, Foxtrot, Yankee, Hotel, Foxtrot, 3, Delta, Juliet, Mike, Oscar, Sierra.
Hello and welcome to Lux Occult, a podcast where we gleefully taunt the mundane, butcher the Latin language, and also discuss a variety of occult topics. I'm Luxa, and if you are hearing this, then this show is for you. Maybe you don't realize it yet, although I hope that you do, but you already have the ability to change yourself and change reality in some way or another. And if you want to use it, magic belongs to you, belongs to all of us. It's really something that's been present in every human culture throughout time, full stop. So maybe this whole magic thing sounds like sort of silly or stupid or delusional or even creepy. You're entitled to your feelings, but I would urge you to try to keep an open mind. If you're not a practitioner yourself, then chances are when I say the word magic, I'm talking about something completely different, a completely different concept than what you might be thinking of. So whether you're an experienced practitioner or simply occult curious, I hope you enjoy this conversation. Alright, so today I have my brother with me, Asher. Dude, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh yeah. Okay, so can you tell us a few words about like your relationship to the occult or spirituality or anything like that?
Yeah, sure. So some background info for the listeners. We're brother and sister, and our mom was kind of like a hippie adjacent.
I think hippie's fair.
Yeah. So I think that we have been raised in an atmosphere where that kind of stuff is not really taboo at all for us, and so that's just kind of the background. But personally, I've dabbled a little bit here and there. I've done the Ouija board. I've tried to talk to spirits a couple times, but honestly, I never really felt like anything was happening, so I just kind of stopped.
Okay.
As far as spirituality goes, well, I think there's a lot of stuff going on, in the seams and the shadows that we don't know about. So I'm always interested to try and, look into those shadows and see what's there.
Hell yeah, dude. Okay, so what do you think magic is, or what do we think magic is? I figured that maybe the dictionary would be a good place to start here. Alright, so it's a noun, the power of apparently influencing the course of events by using mysterious or supernatural forces. Or mysterious tricks, such as making things disappear and appear again, performed as entertainment. Or it can be a quality that makes something seem removed from everyday life, especially in a way that gives delight. Or something that has a delightfully unusual quality.
So would you say that friendship is magic?
I mean, I think that's
Sorry.
I think that's been pretty fucking well established. I don't know. So yeah.
Okay.
I'm not gonna argue against that. That would be a stupid hill to fucking die on, wouldn't it? Anyway.
Sorry for that interruption.
No worries. Alright, so it's from the Greek word, or the Greek words magic technique, which means the art of a magus, which is like a magician. So this is kind of interesting because our word for magic literally means what a magician does. So I feel like something that humans do naturally. So have you ever had an experience maybe as a kid or anything involve sort of interacting with the world in a kind of a magical way?
Well, as a kid, when I was 15, I had the out of body experience. When I was younger, I think imaginary friends, that kind of stuff is just kind of second nature to a lot of kids.
Yeah.
So I'd had that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
But the out of body experience was weird. Maybe we could talk about that at some point.
Yeah, dude. We're definitely gonna be covering astral projection and that kind of shit.
Cool.
Dream work and everything at some point. So yeah, hell yeah. Okay, so Aleister Crowley defined magic as the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will, including mundane acts of will and ritual magic. So while we're on the topic of Crowley and the word magic, this is a kind of interesting sidebar. It was he who began the trend of spelling the word magic with a K at the end of it, which is actually an early English spelling of the word. He did this in order to distinguish kind of ritual occulty magic from like David Blaine style illusion.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. That's a
Yeah.
nice little info.
Cool.
Now, is that just Magik or is it CK?
CK, typically. But you see a lot of interesting spelling of
You
a
do
lot
see
of
a lot of different spellings, but I didn't realize maybe that was to distinguish it from stage.
Yeah, so there you have it. All right, so author Phil Hine has this book called Condensed Chaos, which is a really good book about Chaos Magick. It's definitely a classic. I'm sure you've probably heard of it if you've ever read anything about Chaos Magick or looked into it at all. So I'm going to read a little bit from his definition. So he asks, what's magic? All right, so he says, the world is magical. We might get a sense of this after climbing a mountain and looking down upon the landscape below, or in the quiet satisfaction at the end of one of those days if everything has gone right. Magic is a doorway through which we can step into mystery, wildness, and immanence. We live in a world subject to extensive and seemingly all-embracing systems of social and personal control that continually feed us the lie that we are each alone, helpless, and powerless to effect change. Magic is about change. Changing your circumstances so that you strive to live according to a developing sense of personal responsibility, that you effect change around you if you choose, that we are not helpless cogs in some clockwork universe. All acts of personal or collective liberation are magical acts. Magic leads us into exhilaration and ecstasy, into insight and understanding, into changing ourselves and the world in which we participate. Through magic, we may come to explore the possibilities of freedom. So, yeah, that's pretty sweet. Like, I don't know. I think it's kind of really like a beautiful sentiment. In a different book about Chaos Magick, Hands-on Chaos Magick, the author Andriech Vitimus puts it like really succinctly, and I kind of like this a lot too. So it's like, all right, so what's magic? That's a good question, and the first of many that you're going to have to answer for yourself. So,
well, I guess that just kind of, if you want to know, then, that's up to you. So I like that too.
Yeah. Okay, so here's some observations that I've made. Magic only works along the lines of achievable reality, and so if you do an operation to turn yourself into, like, I don't know, a flying crocodile or whatever the fuck, like, success is going to look like you having a dream or vision or something in which this occurs. It's not for using instead of modern medicine. You could probably use it to help like amplify the healing effects of something. In fact, I have done this. But it's not meant to replace it. It can't do the impossible, like, like a regal grow your head if it gets cut off or something. Like, that's dumb. It can't do the impossible, right? Which is kind of ironic, right? Because the term magic in like common vernacular, I think, at least like in the media or whatever, people like have all these associations with it as like the impossible becomes possible.
Yeah.
And that's not how it works. It's not that the impossible becomes possible. So I'm sorry, it might sound like I'm like raining on the parade or some shit, but like if you actually think about what I'm saying is that like if something is possible, then it's possible that magic can help you make it happen.
It's just you got to be realistic.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so putting that up there. All right, so cool. All right, magic is so great. Like, why isn't everybody doing it then? Well, it turns out that it can be a lot of work and take a fair bit of discipline, but it can also be like kind of scary sometimes, maybe a little dangerous, at least in my experience for some people. There's also common pitfalls that we're going to be talking about in depth in the next episode. Vitimus sums it up pretty nicely again for us. Okay, so the magician and witch often risk a lot, he says. Shamans risk death for their initiations. Given that the notions of reality are not firm, a magician can certainly have difficulty retaining sanity, and it is all too easy to get frustrated. Some states of mind are difficult for the conscious mind and ego to accept. Of course, success breeds its own insanity, with the god complex, otherwise known as magicitis. Magicitis is dangerous because the magician believes that he or she is all-powerful and therefore becomes insanely sloppy. The trade-off here is that reality is not static. If you don't like something about your situation, you can change it. If you need something to fall in line, you can make it happen. So he sums it up kind of nicely there. Okay, so like everything else, magic is not for everybody, and it can be both positive or negative, for you, depending on how you use it and what you do and everything. It sort of just comes down to like having a bunch of personal agency and the responsibility that goes along with that. So being able and willing to take responsibility for yourself and for your shit could probably be considered maybe like a prereq for like fucking around with this stuff in a constructive way, but that is just my opinion.
That's not going to stop anybody who's,
Oh
I'm
no,
just saying.
of course not. No, that's just my opinion, man.
Yeah.
Here's you will. Anyway, so what is chaos? Go back to the Oxford Dictionary again here. All right, so it's a noun. In physics, it means behavior so unpredictable as to appear random, owing to great sensitivity to small changes in conditions. In Greek mythology, it is the first created being, from which came the primeval deities Gaia, Tartarus, Erebus, and Nyx, from the Greek word for chaos, which is a vast chasm or void. I'm not sure if I said those names right. So
I think it's Tartarus, but I'm not sure.
Tartarus.
Which I believe is like the underworld, like this like massive pit.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. Well, I need to brush up on that stuff. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So chaos is not necessarily random, but just appearing to be random because it's so complex.
Yeah. When we talk about like chaos theory, it's kind of interesting. Like you'll find that there's order in the chaos and chaos in the order, depending on what scale you look at it at. There's a lot of other things about it too, like it mentioned in the dictionary, like sensitivity to small changes in conditions, a few other factors like symmetry across scales, other really interesting things. Actually, there's a whole very accessible, very fun book about it called Chaos Making a New Science by James Gleek. And he discusses things like the butterfly effect and like fractals, which everybody loves. I think it's kind of interesting, like it really does explore that there is this like universal nature of how systems in general work in the world. So there's this occult concept called as above, so below. I don't know if you've heard that before.
Of course.
So yeah, I mean, I think that it really illustrates that like really well. So when actually
now, can you explain that saying a little bit? Because I honestly don't really know what it means.
Yeah, well, it really depends on what context you're talking about it in. But let me talk about it in terms of maybe, I don't know, the Western occultism version of Kabbalah. My understanding of that, at least, is that so there's like this idea of like the tree of life, right, which is sort of a illustration of how things emanate down from like monism, or like a singular oneness, and kind of like bifurcate and become all these different things, eventually manifesting into like the physical world.
Okay, interesting.
And so that's sort of like how God supposedly created things, and then also the structure of the consciousness of God in like a very complex way, and then also we have the same thing in us. So it's like as above, so below. It's like we're like these little versions of a bigger.
Okay, cool.
So that's one example of it. How about another example would be like lightning and how it looks sort of like the way that blood veins branch out and stuff like that.
Ooh.
Patterns that you can kind of see.
Yeah, it's totally different,
Yeah.
but it also makes sense.
Yeah, oh yeah. If you like that stuff, I would definitely encourage you to look into chaos theory. It's really, really interesting. When I read Gleek's book, like as a young woman, like I was pretty young at the time. I think I was like maybe 18 or 19. I was like deeply entrenched in like sort of like a materialistic paradigm, and I had sort of like this faith that science would someday reveal all of life's mysteries. Like we just need faster, more powerful computers or other like more advanced tech. But like when I started learning about this stuff and like how like kind of slippery and weird shit gets when you start looking at it closely and carefully, there's some areas of physics where this happens too. It sort of like helped me reconnect with like this sense of the world being magical, like because it does sort of hint at the fact that like there's some things that will evade our detection and our instrumentation just based on the way that the physical world works as we understand it right now. And I think that's really kind of fucking cool and interesting. So
well, yeah, like gravity. I mean, shit, we just know it works, right? We can't really explain it beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, there's some interesting theories that show a lot of promise and stuff, or hypotheses, I should say. But I mean, I don't know. not
It's
a
just like
physicist.
at the heart of physics. There's almost like faith-based kind of laws like that have just been accepted because they work, but we can't really explain them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's something that we could say for many fields, not just scientific ones. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, at some point it's like, well, fuck, that's what I see, so I don't know. Like, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and okay, so this is my opinion. Science can't answer like some of the big questions, right? And that's not what it's fucking for. Like, and don't get
Yeah.
me wrong, like I'm into it. Like I have a degree in biology and shit, but I'm into like a lot of different fields of science. I fucking love it. I think it's important, but like it's not for everything. Okay, so like I remember something that one of my physics professors, I think it's like a fellow student asked what happened before the Big Bang, and the professor, like, he was this little old man, and like he like gave the kid like the dirtiest look. It was really funny, and then like he sort of like looked like he was trying to figure out if this kid was like joking, and he kind of like threw up his hands and like got a little bit mad, and he was like, I don't know, ask a philosopher, or better yet, a priest. That's not a scientific question. And like, like, I remember laughing at the time, and like he was like really mad, and I don't know. I don't think I got it at the time, but looking back on it, I think I get it. Like, it's like we could. I don't know. And also, okay, we could, and I definitely have done this all the time, debated with people about what the definition of a scientific question is. But I think that at the like heart of what my professor was trying to say was that like science was never meant to stand in for religion. Like it's a methodology, like a collection of tools, and not a system of belief.
Yeah.
And in this way, it's kind of like chaos magic.
Yeah, I think it's kind of morphed into that because it's simple and it's a way to explain everything, right? Like, but yeah, I don't think it was intended to be that way either.
No, I mean it's a great way to find out things, but it's not for finding everything out.
It's like in the absence of religion, like you still like maybe that's just part of the psyche or society that we need like these idols to worship or these altars to worship at, and maybe that's just kind of became one of them in the absence of the others.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that there's all kinds of strange altars that we worship at these days. And yeah, I think that this kind of, I don't know, propensity for religious thought or whatever you want to call it, like spirituality, it's there. I mean, even if you're somebody who's like really not into it, like you could still say that like, yeah, that's something that over time humans have always sort of had, and we haven't really changed like basically at all, like from an evolutionary standpoint. So like all that hardware and stuff, it's sort of in there. And like I feel like if you don't like make use of it to your own benefit, like somebody else probably might, right? Like
Yeah.
There's a lot of smart people out there that understand this stuff really well. And yeah, while we're on the topic though, I'm just like while I'm fucking ranting about science, I'm just gonna read like a little bit from Douglas Adams. This is from the Hitchhiker's Guide book. So long and thanks for all the fish. And this is a character named Wonko the Sane, and he's like kind of talking about what it means to be a scientist. And I just really like this, so you have it. He says, I'm a scientist, and I know what constitutes proof. But the reason I call myself by my childhood name is to remind myself that a scientist must also be absolutely like a child. If he sees a thing, he must say that he sees it, whether it was what he thought he was going to see or not. First see, think later, then test. But always see first. Otherwise you will only see what you were expecting. Most scientists forget that.
Yeah, that's sad. But yeah, the scientific method, I mean, that's how it's supposed to work, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, like anything, dogmatic thought gets entrenched into things. And
yeah, egos get involved, money gets involved.
Yeah, I was going to say the economic factors can't be ignored, for sure. So anyway, we love science. Anyway.
Yeah, we both have science degrees. Or mine's like a minor, but yeah, not anti-science by any stretch.
Okay, so can we just like take the definition of chaos and the definition of magic and like cram them together and understand what chaos magic is?
I think we're gonna take that jump, aren't we?
Yeah, well, the answer to that is no. We can't do that because that's not exactly what would be an accurate definition of it.
Dang it. It's not that simple?
No, it's not that simple. I think that there is a little bit of like a misunderstanding too, like about it because of the name. But in general, like, everybody has a slightly different answer about what the definition of chaos magic is, because it's like a highly individualized thing. And so on that note, I'm going to go ahead and say right here that I do not speak for anybody but myself. Most of the stuff I'm going to be saying is totally my own interpretation of things, and others can, will, and should disagree. Also, this shit is not for everybody, and nothing is, and that's totally cool. Although I do contend that anybody who wanted to do it could. Okay, so there you have it, my disclaimer. So, Liber, Null, and Psychonaut by Peter J. Carroll is considered by most people, many, to be kind of like the text on chaos magic. You know, it's kind of like the old school original. It's an excellent, if dense read, and I would definitely recommend reading it. So Carroll notes this about the book, and therefore about chaos magic sort of in general, in the introduction. He says 2 major themes run through this book. That altered states of consciousness are the key to unlocking one's magical abilities, and that these abilities can be developed without any symbolic systems except reality itself. So, in another book, Advanced Magic for Beginners, the author Alan Chapman notes that, like, when Liber Null was published in 1978, it was like a revolution in the occult community, because like it was the first time that like people were starting to investigate like a sort of commonality of technique, like a common ties of the way things sort of worked behind magic and its effects.
I wonder if that's something that, you know, has been going on for a long time, right? Because like you were talking about shamanism earlier and how it was pretty much ubiquitous in one form or another, and I wonder if they would get together with like other like holy men or wise women and like trying to shoot shop, you know?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm really not sure. I mean, I think that a lot of other systems have like kind of a faith basis tied into them, like where you're kind of like wholesale bought into like believing that this deity is doing this for you, or that this spirit is doing this for you, or like whatever it is.
Yeah, it's within a place. It has a place within a much larger like system or concept.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's not that idea of like detaching oneself and trying to like objectively look at it without like being wrapped up in the belief of it. Does that make sense? Like,
That does, yeah, that
okay,
does definitely.
okay, cool. So as I said, the name is kind of misleading, Chaos Magic. There's like kind of a misconception for a while. I know this is changing though, luckily, that like the Chaos Magic community was sort of, people felt like it was like, I don't know, dude, a nest of like childish fuckery or whatever, and like not like actually like a legit magic or like occultism scene. But I think that we're seeing like more and more that this is actually like not true at all, and that chaos magic, arguably, perhaps, is possibly the most legit form of it, of magic and occultism. But I mean, of course, I'd fucking say that since I'm so into it. But the reason why I feel this way has to do with like the sort of like operating principles that underlie the sort of like chaos magic paradigm. But we'll get into all that stuff.
Yeah, you're gonna have to explain
here.
that to me, because that didn't make any sense.
Okay, well, I will. Don't worry.
Okay.
We'll get there. As a side note, like, a little bit of childish fuckery is sometimes called for to shake things up a little bit. It has its function and its place in time. Just saying.
So what I'm hearing is that this is magic that you don't have to be initiated in a mystery school or study with some guy in a cave.
No, this is like magic stripped of the trappings and
Okay.
sort of like executed at a theoretical level of effectiveness. I don't know. Let me try to. Let me see if you should ask me again at the end of the episode.
Okay.
Give me like an hour and a half to explain it.
Okay.
All right. So there's a difference. Like, I do want to say too that like there's something called like an eclectic practice, which is like when a practitioner will kind of like borrow things from different practices and kind of like make a sort of DIY practice for themselves, depending on like what they connect with and stuff, like maybe different deities from different, you know, traditions that they might have like a cultural connection to or whatever, like, and that's super cool and awesome. And but that is different than chaos magic. Like, I've heard people like use the term interchangeably, but I do think there might be like a slight distinction. And I think that I would say that,
Is that because you're using you're using established deities. Is that why?
No, you can have like an eclectic practice and do chaos magic,
Okay.
but they are slightly different things.
Okay.
And the distinction is that like chaos magic involves like keeping careful track of what you do and the results of your workings and stuff like that. Like,
I see.
and then also a few other things which I will go into. Okay, so like attaining and mastering altered states of consciousness is another big theme. Experimenting with different like practices and activities, again from different paths and stuff like that. Recording results, avoiding dogmatic thought, and being willing to kind of like forge your own way of doing things are all pretty big themes. So yeah, maybe it is magic stripped to its bare bones if you want to look at it like that. Like maybe you could look at it as like getting back to the basics of using magic, like in a more of an intuitive way too.
It sounds like a modern take on it to me. Like it's been like our ideas of it come from like these obscure texts that have survived, these grimoires and stuff, but that's all wrapped in symbolism and coded language and stuff like that. So they're really hard to understand, and that stuff might have been simpler too. It's just they did it in a certain way for whatever reason. But this seems like, yeah, they're kind of like taking it into this new modern era where we have the internet and this stuff is accessible now, so you don't need to do any of that you don't need anyone else.
I would say I would agree with you 100%. So yeah, like maybe just like getting back to basics too with it, like, using magic intuitively or maybe like instinctively.
Yeah.
We've talked about this in terms of like shamanism. I know there's like a lot of like baggage associated with that term, so I'm probably going to try not to say it too much, but yeah, so all right, there's the idea of like attaining and mastering altered states of consciousness. This is known as gnosis. All right, so this can be like defined as I don't know, like a meditative flow state or trance or emotional overload. There's a bunch of different ways you can get there. It's an altered state of mind. But we'll talk more about gnosis a little bit later. I just wanted to touch on it here real quick. So experimenting with different practices and activities and being willing to forge your own way of doing things. Smash those together here. So there are a lot of magical systems out there, each with its own kind of like cogent organizational schema, usually. If you already have one that works for you, like you can start there and use that. Like you can start where you are. It's fine. You might want to have an open mind about being willing to discard it in the future, possibly. But you don't really need a system, though. You don't need anybody else's system either. Like chances are you might have one of your own that you could discover. You can start there if you want to, and then decide where to go. Whatever. There's a number of different paradigms that like a chaos magician might wish to explore. This can be anything from like dipping a toe into like full immersion in a belief system for as long as an individual feels it suits them. So like maybe you decide like, oh, I want to go see what it's like to be a Catholic for however long, a couple years or whatever, like however long you feel like, or I want to go see what it's like to study, I don't know, whatever, be an atheist or a Scientologist or whatever, whatever you're curious about, like doing, whatever you think might help you expand your experience. I don't know, whatever you're trying to do.
So just don't get caught on the rails unless that's your thing, I guess, and you want to, or you don't have to be on rails. You can just kind of drop in and out of any of these, religions, or that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, like it's kind of just about experiencing it, and well, I mean, I'm sure it's about different things for different people, but yeah. Okay, so bring this up. Some people have criticized the like kind of perceived smash and grab attitude of some chaos magicians, like when it comes to traditions and practices. I do want to say that like I think it's important to be like respectful of whatever tradition and stuff you're learning about. Like, don't be an asshole. Respect other people's shit. There is what is known as like a closed practice too, which is basically something that like you have to be initiated into to be considered like a legit practitioner. So like you shouldn't probably go around being like, I'm a this, like when you haven't been initiated, because like that's a lie or not. Like I don't know.
Sure.
Like you can't just decide to like induct yourself into somebody else's club. Like that's just not how it works. But yeah, you don't need to be in any club to do chaos magic. It is literally something that anybody could do if they wanted to. There's like a ton of different like magical tools and techniques associated with chaos magic. These tools and techniques are continuously being expanded upon, though, as practitioners like invent and define and distill and combine those of others and create their own and stuff. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'd be curious to learn about some of these techniques and some of this stuff, because I think we're getting some good definitions here, but or maybe boundaries or borders of what this encompasses. But what is it? What do you actually do?
Yeah, no, for sure. I will definitely give a little bit of stuff about some technique at the end of the episode here. I will describe to you exactly how to do sigil magic in sort of the what maybe was be considered the basic form that you would see kind of in the older texts. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but
okay, cool.
So yeah, don't worry, we'll get there.
Okay.
All right, so a tip about technique. Your statement of intent, that's where we start, right? If we're going to be recording our results, we need to be able to figure out what those results are. So if you have a really good statement of intent that's very specific, you can compare it to what happened and then decide whether or not you succeeded or failed in your operation. So Phil Hine notes this about the benefits of technical excellence. He says, one of the early misconceptions about Chaos Magick was that it gave practitioners carte blanche to do whatever they liked, and so become sloppy, or worse, soggy, in their attitude towards self-assessment, analysis, etc. Not so. The Chaos approach has always advocated rigorous self-assessment and analysis, and emphasized practice at what techniques you're experimenting with until you get the results that you desire. Learning to do magic requires that you develop a set of skills and abilities, and if you're going to get involved in all this weird stuff, why not do it to the best of your ability? So that's a good question, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. If you want it to work, right?
Well, how the fuck would you know if it even worked at all? If you how would you know if it worked if you haven't know what you're trying to do, right?
Yeah, well, if you're not doing it to your best ability.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So maybe I shouldn't say definitely, because the next thing is avoiding dogmatic thought.
Okay.
A lot of Chaos philosophy has to do with embracing uncertainty and randomness. Since uncertainty is one of the things that is really scary to humans, if we can master the trick of being somewhat cool with it, life can suddenly get a hell of a lot easier. I'm working on it. I don't know, it's hard. A lot of this stuff really comes down to intellectual freedom and mental dexterity and stuff like that. Let me try to explain. Avoiding dogmatic thought is a huge theme in Chaos Magick. I'm going to go ahead and lump deconditioning in with it because I feel that conditioning itself is a form of dogma about yourself. Anyway, I would like to share a little excerpt from Osman Spare's Book of Pleasure, which contains a lot of the ideas that were developed into Chaos Magick. Osman Spare is considered sort of the grandfather of the Chaos Magick movement. His writing is interesting, definitely worth reading. Hard to parse out, which I guess is a sort of polite way of saying it's poor. I don't know. It is a really
academic.
It's interesting. It's very interesting. I really do enjoy it. His visual art is fucking amazing. Y'all should definitely check that shit out. It's very, very cool.
I'm sure we'll have some links in the description.
I should put some links to his art in there. That's a good idea. Okay, so I really like his little attack on dogmatic thought in the form of religious faith. Okay, so this was published in 1913, just for context, in case.
Okay, that's a much different time back then.
It's gonna sound a little different than the stuff that was published in the 70s.
Yeah.
All right, it's still no less fucking sweet, right? Some praise the idea of faith. To believe that they are gods, or anything else, would make them such, proving by all they do to be full of its non-belief. Better is it to admit incapacity or insignificance than to reinforce it by faith, since the superficial protects, but does not change the vital. Therefore, reject the former for the latter. Their formula is deception, and they are deceived, the negation of their purpose. Faith is denial, or the metaphor, idiocy. Hence it always fails. To make their bondage more secure, governments force religion down the throats of their slaves, and it always succeeds. Those who escape it are but few, therefore their honor is the greater. When faith perishes, the self, shall come into its own. Others less foolish obscure the memory that God is a conception of themselves, and is much subject to the law. Then, this ambition of faith, is it so desirable? Myself, I have not yet seen a man who is not God already. So I know that's long, and dense.
It's super dense, but it's cool. It's something that you kind of have to like, get into it and like parse it out.
Yeah, you could definitely tell he was like into like Aleister Crowley shit. I think they did know each other. I think they might have like, some people say they might have been like lovers for a while, so that's fun. But Crowley did write some poetry to Spare, but then he got mad when Spare like disagreed with him and said that Spare was like a brother of the Black Lodge, which is like the evil magicians. Anyway, it's a whole thing. So that's really fun. As a side note, like that thing he's talking about, like about rejecting the superficial in favor of the vital, it's hard to parse out, but that is in there.
What does he mean by that?
Like, I kind of take it as like your shell might protect what's inside, but it's not going to help you evolve it or change it. So like it's better to go for the real thing rather than the superficial, even though it might be harder. That's how I took it, at least. So like, I mean, which is kind of like a cool statement about like authenticity in general, but it also kind of sums up to me like sort of like how my practice has kind of taught me to try to approach the world at large. It's sort of like a lot of time it manifests in an attitude of like, I'd like the real thing or nothing at all, thanks. Like, I don't know. And actually, there's like a lot of fucking bullshit out there in occultism and everywhere else. And so this isn't like a horrible attitude to have, probably, I don't know. And there might not be anything wrong with bullshit sometimes, but it should at least be recognized for what it is. Chances are a lot of the things that you think or believe are total nonsense. So maybe don't hang on to them so tight. I don't know.
well, that's not, I mean, is that fair? I mean,
I'm not saying that like you. I'm saying just like one believes or thinks.
I know, but
I'm not trying to attack your belief system.
I'm not saying me specifically, but I feel like I need to stand up for everybody else. Like, is that fair to just say that? Like, I don't know. It sounds judgmental.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, I'm not trying to make it sound judgmental. I'm just saying that I think that if we really took a step back and objectively like thought about some of the things that we think and believe, it's like, well, that's really silly, right? Like,
okay, well, yeah. If it requires, faith for you to believe it.
That's all. I mean, I'm not saying that it's wrong or bad or immoral or anything like that. Like, it just, if we looked at it, I'd be silly. Like, why do I do that? Like, I don't know. Why do I wash my hands and then grab the doorknob? Like, the doorknob is super dirty.
Yeah.
What's the point of washing your hands? I don't know, right? I mean,
so you don't get the doorknob even more dirty.
You should wash your hands and clean the doorknobs regularly. Anyway.
In this day and age, you can't be too careful.
Study microbiology.
Or don't. Ignorance is kind of bliss when it comes to that stuff.
Or fucking don't. Anyway. I guess what I'm just trying to say, I'm not trying to be a dick about people's stuff. And also, there's nothing, I love nonsense. Believe whatever nonsense you fucking want. I don't care. I'm not trying to be a dick about it.
Okay.
Dogmatic thought, like, it can just hamper innovation, and it can stifle progress sometimes. Like, it can weave, like, webs of illusion around our eyes, and it can spur us to, like, unjust and unkind acts in the name of, like, ideologies into which we have been indoctrinated. So, from a philosophical point of view, like, freedom, like, love or honor or anything else comes from within. So, ubi dubium, ibi libertas. Where there is doubt, there is freedom.
Ooh, I like that.
That's good stuff.
Cool. Yeah, that's cool.
So, all right, this abandonment of dogma can extend to the dogma of, like, how you see yourself, right? Here is Phil Hine discussing a process that many Chaos Magick practitioners use. It's called deconditioning, or it's referred to as deconditioning by many people. All right. He says, the chaos paradigm proposes that one of the primary tasks of the aspiring magician is to thoroughly decondition herself from the mesh of beliefs, attitudes, and fictions about self, society, and the world. Our ego is a fiction of stable selfhood, which maintains itself by perpetuating the distinction of what I am and what I am not, what I like and what I don't like, beliefs about one's politics, religion, gender preference, degree of will, freedom, race, subculture, etc. all maintain a stable sense of self, while the little ways in which we pull against this very stability allows us to feel as though we are unique individuals. Using deconditioning exercises, we can start to widen the cracks in our consensual reality, which hopefully enables us to become less attached to our beliefs and ego fictions, and thus able to discard or modify them when appropriate. Okay, so this is basically sort of about like letting go of like who you were kind of like made to be by conditioning in order to like kind of start figuring out what you are underneath that. If you are anything, I don't know.
If you exist at all.
If you exist at all. We don't know. Just kidding. Don't think about that too hard right now.
I can see why some of these guys would lose their sanity.
Yeah, it's okay. Don't think about it, guys. So how about we take a little break? How do you feel about that?
Sure.
Okay. Fuck yeah. All right. Are you ready for some bibliomancy?
I am.
Okay.
Do I need a D12?
You do need, or I can roll it if you don't have one handy. Okay, so ask your question.
Okay, so what question? Like any question or like?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Will the Rockies make the playoffs?
Okay. Roll the D12.
I got a 1.
All right. So I have constructed a roll table.
Sweet.
I'm a fucking nerd.
Yeah, incorrect. We're fucking nerds.
Indeed. All right. So the first thing, the number one, is the Bible. So pause in one moment while I go grab a copy of that, and we'll do some bibliomancy. Which this is actually like one of the classic ways to do this. So this is kind of fun. Stand by. All right. I have in my hands a copy of Greek Hebrew Study Bible, New American Standard Edition. All right. Will the Rockies make the playoffs?
People need to know.
All right. Here's what I have landed on here. Okay. So this is Isaiah 30:14.
Isaiah 30:14.
Yeah.
Okay.
And those who collapse is like the smashing of a potter's jar, so ruthlessly shattered that a shard will not be found among its pieces to take fire from a hearth or to scoop water from a cistern.
Oh, that's fucking sick.
So I don't know. I don't
no,
think
they're not going to make the playoffs.
the prospects are very good.
No. They're gonna. My hopes have been crushed so utterly, like a pot will no longer be able to bear water.
I guess an alternate interpretation of this could be that this was what they will do to their opponents.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. That
So.
I like that. Yeah. That's a pretty cool passage there you open to.
Yeah, man.
So how is the
Harris.
table? How does that work? Like, how did you make a bibliomancy table?
I made a list of books.
Okay, and then you just open to a random page in the book?
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, I got a good one there. Shit.
Yeah, man. So that worked out pretty well. It's a great example of bibliomancy. A fun pastime that you can do at home for free.
No, so that's basically just like fortune telling.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just divination.
It's vague as the oracle is as well. You know, it could go
Exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of different ideas about divination and how it works, and obviously how magic works in general, and we're going to be getting into all of that
Cool.
actually in the next episode. So yeah, I can't wait to talk about how I think divination might work, but that is for a later time.
I have theories on how astrology might work, so we can talk about that too.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm curious to hear about that as well. Okay. So I do have to say, like, it's been an interesting experience, like, talking about this stuff. Like, I've been so secretive about my practice, like, for so long.
Yeah, I didn't realize you're so into this stuff.
I know, yeah. It's like, but yeah, one can't stay in the broom closet forever, as they call it. I don't know. So, in Advanced Magic for Beginners, Chapman is kind of like talking about the effect that Chaos Magick had on the occult landscape. And he sort of like brought about this idea of like experiment and reductionism. And he's talking about like how, magic sort of became like this tool or technology, and that belief was a tool rather than an end in and of itself. Basically, he says a lot of mean things about what the Chaos Magick scene was like for a little while. But I think all of that is changing. Like, he's talking about, like, how it's so shitty that, there's all this great stuff in Liber, Null, and Psychonaut, like, about, like, the great work and morality and reincarnation and permanent magical consciousness and all this shit. And he's like, and people don't even consider that fucking magic anymore. Like, but, he's like, it's been fallen prey to, like, extreme postmodernism and degenerated, he says, to such an extent that, like, many of its practitioners now claim it's just a theory, despite the fact that it's clearly synonymous with a body of work and an unquestionable aesthetic. He says instead of attempting to understand magic by discovering what the practice has to offer through experience, the extreme postmodern magicians like deconstruct our rich and varied magical heritage to one correct answer, which is that all truth is relative, except for their omniscient knowledge that this is so.
That's so true with Kantians in general. Like.
He's talking about with the benefits of magical practice reduced to like immediate material effects. Like, I already know everything the magic has to offer, and anything else that isn't material result isn't magic. So he really this was written, I think, in 2008, I believe. So I think that things have definitely sort of changed in the meantime.
Yeah, I think that's more to the culture, how much our culture,
yeah.
When this guy wrote this thing, they still had, a classical education, basically. I think Dewey was, 10 years before that or something, so, or 20 years, so he probably had a classical education,
Oh, no, this was written in 2008.
No, I mean the guy who originally wrote it in 1913.
Oh, Austin Osman's Fair? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so that kind of stuff, I mean, I don't think that we today really, this is going to sound bad, but most people don't really have the capability to even think about that kind of stuff. Not that they can't, it's just that they don't know how, or they don't think it's important.
Yeah, I think it was a mistake that we stopped teaching philosophy alongside of science and stuff. I do think that there's a place for the fucking humanities in terms of developing
history,
your cognitive capacities. But yeah,
yeah,
whatever. We can fucking rail about
the good old
days.
By the way, we're a product of John Dewey. But I guess kind of not as much because we went to...
Whatever.
Yeah, that's another topic.
So, okay, like I was saying, I think this attitude that Chapman is to crime is, far less pervasive now than it was when he published it, a little bit over a decade ago.
Oh, I see,
so,
okay.
Yeah, the concepts of deconditioning and, self-actualization and stuff, seem to be, sort of central to a lot of the practitioners that I've talked to, at least, and that I've heard talking about it and I see online and everything. So, the actual point behind a person's spiritual practice is most likely going to be pretty personal, right? I can say that for me, and I think this is probably a pretty common attitude. It's a thing about finding my own pathways to personal autonomy and agency through this sort of process of continuous exploration of the changing worlds.
That's a pretty cool way of putting it, dude. The word chaos comes with a lot of baggage, but when you put it like that, it's well, shit, this is self-empowerment.
Yeah, man, chaos is just unexpressed potential.
Yeah, going to those Greek primeval gods, they were birthed from the chaos, so it gave birth to these beings, to these aspects that they couldn't exist without it.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I could wax poetic about fucking chaos and undifferentiated potential for quite some time.
Well, I think that just the word has negative connotations. I've the Warhammer stuff comes to my mind when I hear chaos, because I really like the lure in Warhammer 40k especially, and it's chaos is the evil faction in that. It's up to no good, they're corrupting everything constantly, and so yeah. Yeah,
no, that's interesting. And I do think that culturally we do, and this is probably true of humans in general, because order is stability and stability is a lot of times safety, but it's not freedom. So we're sort of conditioned and we sort of tend towards order. Anyway, we want things to be orderly, we want things to be stable, which makes sense. We want to fucking be able to know that you'll be able to eat tomorrow or whatever. That makes sense, right?
Yeah, we can't really depend on ourselves anymore. We have to go to the grocery store to get food. We don't, we're completely a part of this system.
We don't have to be, but yeah, we are.
Like, it's really hard not to be.
It's
right?
really, really hard, but we don't have
Yeah.
to. I'm just,
You don't have to be, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's crazy people that like live out in the woods and shit, and that's fucking cool.
Yeah,
Or, like,
yeah.
I don't know, whatever you do. Maybe it's not cool. I don't know. Not sure.
mean,
I've not tried.
Seems pretty cool.
It seems cool. It's a nice fantasy, that's for sure. Alright, so let me try to get like a little bit more specific about some of these ideas behind all this stuff too. Like, a lot of what people might consider like classic chaos magic comes out of the tradition of Crowley, like as I said, through Spare. I'm going to talk a little bit about this dude Crowley's Book of the Law, in which he famously says, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will." Okay, right? So when it comes to like this term will, which is like with the capital W, a lot of people seem to think that, like, a lot of people hear it and they think he just means, yeah, go ahead and like do whatever the fuck you want. It's cool. I guess like that's sort of true, like in a way, but like it's really like it like really misses like the nuanced point of the statement. Okay, so in the book The Living Thelema, David Shoemaker gives us some hints about what Crowley's talking about, like this like will thing, right? All right, he says the will in question is the same will implied by the word thelema, which is the Greek word for will. This is not the simple will of the ego or the whim of the personality. This is not merely wanting something. It is a deeper level of life purpose, and the living out of that purpose in an individual lifetime and across multiple incarnations. The true will is the will of the deep itself, the core of who you really are as a spiritual being. So, like, I don't know. I think that this sort of idea of, like, discovering your true will and all that shit is a big thing in a lot of traditions of Western occultism, and I do think that it shows up with a lot of chaos magic shit, too. So, like, I'm not a Thelemite. I'm not part of, that's, like, Thelema is the religion. But I'm not an expert on Crowley or anything like that, but, like, I do believe I felt, like, what he was, like, talking about. Like, you know, like, feeling this like idea of like shit just like falling into step, this like fucking frictionless motion. And like Crowley had this other kind of famous saying, I'm going to paraphrase, that like when a person is doing their for like true will, then the inertia of the universe will assist them.
Yeah, that's been my experience. Like when you're on the right path, you see all the signs along the road, right?
Yeah, no, for sure, right? Like you can just sort of feel the shift, right? Like
Yeah, the barriers that seem to be, impediments that were, insurmountable, all of a sudden are just like gone,
yeah.
without any work that you just step right over it, So I could definitely see how, he's tapping into something there that is, that does, ring true personally.
Yeah, no, for sure. So Shoemaker like goes on a little bit, and he talks about like why this like might be true, maybe like from at least from like the perspective of Thelema. So the true will is an expression of the universal will, as particularized and expressed in your individual life. This is why when we are living in accordance with our true will, we find that much of the time the universe seems to open up a path right in front of us, as if in sympathy with our aims. So this idea of, as I said, like finding like less explored pathways to personal autonomy and agency, like through knowledge of self as self ties to the greater world, could also sort of be summed up in terms of like discovering one's true will.
Yeah, like this reminds me of just the Gnostic stuff that I was reading, the Gospel of Judas stuff. It's
Yeah.
kind of
We
rings.
don't have time to go into it right now, but there's like a lot of different tie-ins and parallels there. So yeah, you're definitely your instinct is spot on there. So one of the ways that sometimes people will say that this, you'll know that like you're on the right path, is like you'll start to see like synchronicities starting to pop up.
Yeah.
So synchronicities are like meaningful coincidences, right? Things that aren't necessarily related, but that you tie together as being related to something in your mind that is like significant and meaningful to you.
Yep.
We're not going to go too far into them because we're going to talk about it in depth in terms of like how Jung talked about it and like some other like kind of cool, fun, kooky stuff in a later episode. But I did want to mention them here since they can be important. So I think for me the practice is about like, as you said, as we talked about, discovering like what your thing is and then doing the thing, right? So maybe that's like overly simplistic. Many practitioners from a variety of traditions use the term the great work instead. So here's a few thoughts on the topic from Carroll's Liber MMM, which you can find in Liber, Null, and Psychonaut. So he's talking about this kind of like meditation techniques. So, all right. transmutation of the mind into a magical consciousness has often been called the Great Work. It has a far-reaching purpose leading to the discovery of the true will. Even a slight ability to change oneself is more valuable than any power over the external universe. So, like, okay, that seems, like, stupid at first. It's like that, but, like, if you really think about it, it makes sense because you're the filter through which the external universe must flow. Like,
Yeah.
if you can change your outlook, you will literally change the way you see the world, and in all intents and purposes, the way the world will have changed for you. So
Yeah. Ooh,
right?
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like if you want to get where you need to go, you got to make sure that you got your shit straight. Like that you're on the same page with yourself, and you're not gonna self-defeat or whatever.
Yeah, you don't want to be at crossed purposes with yourself, for sure. Which it's hard fucking not to be sometimes, right? Like,
Oh yeah. And
I
that's
mean,
just
like,
part of living.
yeah, and also something about the way that we're kind of wired, right? Like, I during this blog a while back, like talking about how hard it is to like fucking train yourself not to do the like animal shit that you want to do, like eating sweet stuff, where you're like, I'm not gonna eat that much candy anymore, and then like you're like in the back seat like watching in horror as you're like eating like a whole bag of Starburst or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, no,
That's
stop. And
really frustrating.
so I mean, I think some of what these techniques are about is getting around that, maybe, or maybe not around it, but addressing it and kind of using techniques to be able to sort of like hack that and do the thing you want to do, even though it's hard and you're not programmed for it. You can reprogram yourself. I don't know, whatever.
Well, I think that just having like a battle plan goes a long way, because that not only are you aware of it, then you can have some kind of tangible way to work through it, or way to get past it, and if one thing doesn't work, you can try other things, and so you're actually addressing it, you're not just letting it linger.
Yeah, or even fucking being like aware of it in the first place, right?
Yeah.
That can
just
be
being
huge.
aware of it goes a long way.
I mean, yeah, so even noticing the thing, I don't know. So yeah, lots of different layers to it, right? All right, how do we do this like stuff that we've been talking about, all this, oh, it's so great, we can all be enlightened. Or how do we do it?
I'd love to know.
Maybe we can be. Maybe we already are. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Everybody's practice is going to be a little bit different. That's par for the course. Like, as we talked about, one thing that I really like to hear about is, like, what people are up to. Like, I really like to hear people's, like, weird creative fucking ideas about shit and, like, strange methods that they've developed and everything. Like, so let me know, like, what you are up to. I will put my email and stuff in the show description and everything, so don't be shy about reaching out. All right, I think I'm going to start with journaling, because this is ever so important. We talked about fucking technical excellence, keeping track of your results, all that shit. It happens in your journal, your magic journal. So this is sort of like one of the things that's at the heart of my practice, and it's, it's take a very pragmatic stance of doing what works. Well, okay, what the fuck works, right? In order to find out what works for you, you need to actually try different things and keep a good record of your results. So that will be in your journal too, right? Like, you could heard people argue about this shit, but to me, do your journal however the fuck you want, right? Like, and basically, like, in order to keep track of what is and is not working, you're probably going to need, like, some pertinent info, like maybe the date and time and, like, what you're doing and why you're doing it would be a good place to start. Some people like to keep track of, like, astrological stuff, moon phase or whatever. I record synchronicities, which, as we said earlier, are, like, meaningful coincidences. I've also been messing around with some, like, kind of, like, different divination techniques that I'm, like, using to get. I've been, like, experimenting with some weird shit, so I'm taking notes on all of that, so those are some examples. I've also found it helpful to include some context about, like, what events are surrounding the workings that I'm doing.
So can you give us an example of, like, just, like, what's a entry looking like?
Sure. I would probably write the date and time and moon phase, possibly, although I've gotten into not doing that as much. I can just look that up if I need to, if I have the date, and I'm lazy. So I would write down, like, what I'm doing. I might say, like, I'm conducting a divination. This is the question. This is like the method I'm using. This was what I got.
Okay.
And then later, after the thing might have already happened, I might go back and like look at it, analyze like my interpretation. Like, was it true? Like, did I like, getting an idea of it?
Okay. Like, so is this something you do every night, or just whenever you want to, or just like doesn't really matter? You can do it like once a week, or
I tend to journal like on a daily basis.
okay.
But I also I have like a daily practice, so that is sort of like part of that.
I see.
And yeah, I mean, yeah, the whole divination thing, that's just like one example. It could be anything. Like, actually, you know what? I feel like I'm on the spot here. Let me just grab the journal and I will look in. I can just share. Okay, yeah. So like some of it is, there's also like some poetry and stuff in here, just like whatever comes up. A lot of notes about different tarot spreads and different Lenormand spreads, different sigils that I've been drawing for a sigil project I'm working on. Yeah. Other notes about what is happening in my life and stuff. So it's basically like, it's sort of like my journal is like an all-purpose journal, which is not the case for everybody. Like, as I said, do it however you want. Like, my practice is pretty like integrated into my life, and so like I feel like it's all sort of tied together, so it's convenient for me to just keep it all in one place. But
yeah, it sounds cool.
Yeah, I mean, I like to be able to like go back and identify patterns and all that good stuff. Like, your journal can kind of become a sort of like, I don't know, user's manual for you.
Yeah, like a handrail to keep keep you steady in a path.
Yeah, or just like and also like to be honest with yourself, like to like for self-analysis and stuff, and like, I don't know, there's a lot of different purposes. Like, basically, like, I don't know, even if basically this. So memory, it really sucks. It really, really does. Like, the more we learn about it, the more flawed we realize that it is. And so that's just the fucking truth, everybody. So if you don't write shit down, like, you're probably remembering it wrong. I'm just saying. So, like, even if this magic thing seems like it might not be for you, like, I would still keep a fucking journal. I'm just saying, dude.
Yeah, it does sound super beneficial. I used to do it as a kid, and I remember it being, I'd go back and read them, I'd feel so silly, like, but I don't feel that way now.
I mean, well, it is kind of fucking silly, but it's really fucking worth it. Like, when it was really, really hard for me to get into it. It was, like, very, very difficult. I even had to write somebody else's name on the fucking journal. Like, it was like the weird mental gymnastics I had to fucking do to like get around my aversion to it, like, which is super weird, but whatever, it worked, and now I'm in the habit, and it's fine. So, yeah. Some people, like, this is a side note, some people will keep a separate journal to write down their dreams in, which is something that a lot of people, occultists, will get into the habit of doing, especially if you want to pursue like lucid dreaming and stuff like that. So that's a little note there. All right. Another big part of the practice, meditation. So Liber MMM has some good stuff in it. Try those for sure, do them. But honestly, like, if you're brand new to the practice of meditation, you might find it expedient to get into the habit with some like guided meditations or other stuff, just to sort of like train up to the stuff in MMM. Like, I don't know. I feel that in general, like, the best meditation for any given individual is the one that they're actually going to do.
Yeah, this is a huge barrier to this kind of stuff, because a lot of people don't know what that means, meditation, or like, I don't really meditate, quote unquote. Like, so this is something I'd have to try to do. Like, and the guided ones have been, like, those yoga ones I told you about have been very easy, but to do it on your own, it seems it's intimidating.
Yeah. Well, and I think another problem, too, is that we have this conception about meditation that, like, we see people doing it, and it's like, peaceful and zen, and, like, when you're doing it, that is not the fucking experience, usually. Usually it's fucking frustrating. Like, I mean, it can be, like, especially when you're first starting. Like, I still have days where it's like, I don't know, I just can't get my voice in my head to shut the fuck up for, like, 10 seconds. And then there's other days where it's like totally chill. So, I mean, I don't know. I think that it's like, the point isn't necessarily even to like do a good job of it, but just to like try to do it, right? Like, and just sort of start where you are and accept what is, and like, I don't know, man. And like, yeah, like I said, like, if find what works for you. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of people that are like, oh no, you have to do this certain style. You have to, like, no, I don't know. Sorry, dude. Fuck that. Like, fuck all that dogma, dude. Do what fucking works for you. And the same goes for exercise, by the way. Like, I don't know. The best exercise is anyway. Meditation is a key component of my practice, and it seems to be for many others, I should say. And based on my reading, it's like almost universally recommended in some form or another in like most spiritual or mindfulness practices. So, okay, in general, meditation equals good. There you have it. A couple more notes about gnosis here. So meditation equals good, not just for the obvious reasons, which I'm sure that you have all heard plenty about. And it's like another one of those things that you should totally do, even if you like never even try magic or you don't care or whatever. Like, one of the goals for Chaos Magick practitioners' meditation practice is to sort of like be able to train the mind to enter an altered states of consciousness or gnosis at will. So there are, of course, other goals too. All right, Carroll has this to say about magical trances. Magic is the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. The will can only become magically effective when the mind is focused and not interfering with the will. The mind must first discipline itself to focus its entire attention on some meaningless phenomena. So in order for your will to like do its thing, or some people would say it's like your subconscious, or like, I don't know, there's a lot of different verbiages for this thing, this phenomenon, like basically whatever it is, like you need to get the hell out of its way and let it do its thing. Does that make sense?
I think so, yeah. I mean, you could definitely elaborate on it more, but
yeah, I will definitely try.
Like, how do you get out of the way?
Well, the idea of gnosis is one of the ways. So, all right, let me just go back to Oxford again real quick. Oxford Dictionary defines it as knowledge of spiritual mysteries.
Ooh.
So, and I think that this actually could be a good place to start and hear a little bit more from Carroll about this. Like, altered states of consciousness are the key to magical powers. The particular state of mind required has a name in every tradition. No mind, stopping the internal dialogue, passing through the eye of the needle, ain, or nothing, samadhi, or one-pointedness. In this book, it will be known as gnosis. The book, by the way, is the original Psychonaut. It is an extension of the magical trance by other means.
Extension of magical trance by other means?
Yeah, so this is how we get out of the way of the will.
Okay.
Is to get into these altered states of consciousness.
Okay.
So there's two like main flavors of this, or two main ways of doing this. So there's excitatory gnosis, which is basically you like get so amped up by like emotional energy or physical activity, like dancing or sex or exercise, or like, you know, that you go into like a trance state. You like get so like overloaded that you're...
I'm thinking of the whirling dervishes. Spin themselves into ecstasy.
I think that might be like a really perfect example of that. Yeah, God, that shit's fucking cool, man. Hell yeah.
It's so cool, yeah.
So yeah, okay, that's a good example. That inhibitory gnosis is like sort of the opposite. Instead of like, you know, stimulation of the senses, they're inhibited. So you can get so chill from like meditation or fasting or sleeplessness or like whatever you're doing that you can go into this trance state or gnosis.
That sounds more palatable for me personally.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways to do it. A lot of people will experiment with different things, and you know, you probably want to be able to do this in a variety of different ways. Maybe there's chemognosis, which is like the use of like mind-altering substances to achieve a trance. Most people play around with like several different ways, as I said, of achieving this stuff. A lot of people would say too that like you don't want to like use drugs as a crutch for this. Like,
yeah,
just saying. There's a lot more to say, but like hopefully that will serve going forward, because this is a big topic and there's a lot of different interesting things to say about it. But
definitely
such a limited amount of time for one episode. So one more concept that I do want to hit on just real quick, and this is something that is really near and dear to my heart, is the idea of like the importance of laughter to the practice. A lot of times Chaos Magick practitioners will use laughter as a way to like reset after a working or banish after working.
Yeah, if you're doing something super intense, like working yourself into this state of gnosis, then you got to get out of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. The way to get back to normal, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. and this is like this whole like laughter thing is something I'm definitely going to be talking about more in the future. But like it's like it has like so many magical properties to it. It really does. It really can transform a situation. You know, like the most like gruesome scenes of horror can become like funny, like when you're watching like a shitty like B horror movie or something, or like I don't know, or like something that's like really fucked up. Like you might like laugh bitterly at
Well,
it.
we were talking about Caesar and some of his antics, and the only thing you really can do is just kind of laugh. You know?
Yeah. So, and it is interesting, like laughter.
Or cry. I mean, it's like
Yeah. But see, crying is not even technically the opposite of laughing. Carroll talks about this and we were over it. Like, so yeah, it's just really a magical thing. There's something called laughter yoga. I would recommend it. It's really great. Okay. So, as I promised, fucking here we are. How do we do it? All this
how do
shit.
you do the thing?
How do you do the thing? Here's the most fucking basic way to do the thing. Sigil magic. And this is the thing that Chaos Magick is really best known for contributing to modern occultism. This is fucking big. This is huge shit, right? Like everybody and their mom is fucking around with sigil magic. So the definition of a sigil, as it applies to using sigil magic, is that it is a symbolic representation of an out. Okay, so it's like a representation of something that you want to have happen.
Okay.
All right, so Carroll says that there are 3 parts to the operation of a sigil. The sigil is constructed, the sigil is lost to the mind, and the sigil is charged. So, okay, what the fuck does that mean? You might have seen some, this is also like sort of a sidebar here, like you might have seen some memes related to Chaos Magick or sigils that like reference the fact that many people use solo sex or masturbation as a means of entering an altered state of consciousness in order to do sigil magic.
Well, that's easy. I can do that.
Anybody can do it. As I said. Most people can do it. I don't think you even need to have an orgasm. Like some people don't have them, and I don't think it's necessarily necessary to do this either. So don't be dissuaded if that is an issue for you. Anyway, where was I?
You're talking about masturbation.
God damn it. I was still talking about that. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead, because this is, everybody's always joking around about this. So I'm just going to go ahead and fucking address it too. And like, I do want to say there's like infinite ways to do sigils. But like, here's like a really basic rundown from Alan Chapman, which is, this is sort of his thing, is like very basic rundowns in Advanced Magic for Beginners. It's all about that. So if that's kind of your style, then I would check that out. Okay, so here it is. The method of sigilization consists of writing out a desire, omitting repeated letters, arranging the remainder of the letters into an arbitrary abstract glyph. The magician then enters a state of great excitement or calm. By such methods as hyperventilation, meditation, flagellation, or other pain-inducing practices, dancing, or ethnogenic consumption. But the most popular method, for obvious reasons, is sex. At the peak of the altered state, this would be orgasm in the case of sex, the sigil is visualized or looked at and then forgotten about. Sometime after the act, the desire will manifest in the form of a synchronicity. So, there you have it. That's like fucking basically all you really need to know about sigil magic. Like I see a lot of people asking questions like in online forums and stuff like that, like about like, oh, am I doing this right or am I doing that right? And like the real honest answer is that there's not like a right way to do it per se. Like there's what will work and what won't work for you. Yeah. So try it and see if it works, and if it works, then it works and you're doing it quote unquote right for you.
Sounds like a diet, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. Like magic, this is my opinion, but you're the fucking secret ingredient, right? The secret ingredient that makes the magic work is you. It comes from you, sort of, I think, but like, I don't know. Or at least it goes through you. I don't fucking know.
Oh, I mean, you're
conversation for another time.
Yeah,
like,
you're the one doing the stuff, so.
Yeah. So, I mean, don't get like hung up or dissuaded about like, am I doing this right? Am I doing that right? Like, just fucking try it out, like, and see what works. And like, I don't know. There's millions of different ways to do sigils. Like, literally, you can arrange your statement of intent into a mantra or a picture, or make a posture with your body that's a sigil. As with many things in the Chaos Magic paradigm, you're limited only by yourself in terms of like what you think might work for you. So if this stuff sounds interesting, give it a try. I would strongly suggest that you sigilize for something that you really actually want, though. Like, not something that you're like emotionally invested in, but that's something that you wouldn't mind actually having happen, because this stuff actually does seem to be pretty effective. Another important note is that you should be careful how the statement of intent is phrased. Be as specific as possible, because this is going to make it easier to tell if you have been successful or not. And it's also going to help you avoid the little jokes that the universe sometimes likes to play, it seems like.
It's like the genie when you're not specific enough and he fucks you over.
Yeah, like dumb fucking cute little jokes. I don't know, it's hard. None are springing to mind, but like, anybody out there that has had this happen, let me know. I would love to hear your stories about the little pranks that have been played on you by the universe. So yeah, be careful what you wish for, and wish for what you sigilize for, I think would be a good way to say it. And also have fun. Fuck it, I don't know. Don't worry about doing it right or wrong or whatever. There's not really a right or wrong. I don't know.
All right, so to make this sigil, I'm going to write out a simple, clear intent. And this is just one way of doing it. And then I'll take away the repeating letters, and then I can just arrange it however I want into like a pattern, or I guess like an image, or I guess the sigil itself.
Symbol.
Symbol, okay.
Yeah. Sometimes people will say, take out all the vowels and then remove all the repeating letters, or like, again, there's not like a rule about it, right?
Okay.
Like,
So just techniques.
Yeah. So whatever you are into, so that you make it into a little picture.
Once you make the picture, then you have to go into this altered state, however you choose to do that, and focus on the sigil, and then forget it when you're coming out of the state. Is that?
Yeah, like, this sort of idea is that like, you want to, instead of thinking about like, okay, like, let's say you like really want a new pair of shoes, and you make a sigil for it. Instead of like obsessing about the shoes, you're gonna like take that idea and turn it into this like picture.
Okay.
So like, when you look at this little picture, like, you're not directly thinking about the shoes anymore.
It's the idea of your obsession.
It's sort of like, now it's like, now there's this like thing, and it's like attached to something that I know I want, but it's become so abstract. And like, sometimes, like, especially if you get into this stuff, like, you'll have a bunch of these things going at once, and you'll totally lose track about what they mean, which is sort of ideal. And then you can charge them or fire them, or however you like to say it, like, set them off into the world in one way or the other.
So after you've charged it, you want to destroy it? Is that?
You can. I mean, it really depends on what you're into. Like, for a while, I would burn them, because like, that was sort of like part of the tradition that I was sort of had been working in before I started fucking around with this stuff. So it just kind of like made sense to me. So, but yeah, I mean, whatever, you throw it away, or I don't know, do whatever you want with it, hang it up somewhere. A lot of people recommend like not like looking at it for a while though, until after the thing happens or doesn't happen, depending on if it worked or not. But like, there's other people that say like, no, you can hang it up somewhere where you'll see it out of the corner of your eye, or like, there's a lot of different like philosophies out there on this. So again, I mean, whatever works.
Okay. And also, but you gotta be clear with your intent. So don't be, choose your words carefully.
Yeah, it's something ideally it should be something that's measurable. Like if you sigilize for like
was thinking good sleep. I've been having trouble sleeping. Like, is that something you can make a sigil for?
You could try, yeah, fuck. Like, I would sigilize for, like, I sleep 8 hours tomorrow night.
Okay.
Or something like that. Like, that's specific, measurable, like...
Yeah, nice and simple, and because I like my first instinct is to like do much bigger things, but maybe it's better to start with something small.
Well,
like that.
yeah, I mean, like, that's the thing. Like, you want shit to be measurable. So, like, if you want to attain something, like a larger goal, just like any time you would be trying to attain a large goal, you would want to break it down into smaller goals and think about it that way, right? Like,
Yeah, if you're being practical about it, yeah.
well, I mean, this shit is all about practicality, my friend. So
Yeah. I think what sounds really just appealing about this more than anything is that it's just like you can think about parts of yourself or your life that you're not happy with and just try to put that intent out there that you want it to change. And maybe by doing this stuff, like that helps it bring it out of your head and into reality or whatever, like into external existence. And in some way or other, it doesn't really matter. Like that's the first step to actually doing it, right?
yeah, no, for sure. Like, I know we talked about this a little bit before, but like the idea of like writing in a journal too, like the act of writing is sort of its own form of like bringing something into the world or like manifest. I mean, I'm so tired of the word manifesting, but I can't think of a better one. But yeah, like,
Being into history, like that's what makes history versus memory, is that someone wrote it down, and it still has all these flaws, but by that act of writing it down, it became something that transcended them as an individual and lasted beyond their lifetime.
yeah, no, definitely.
So it is powerful. It's super powerful in a lot of different ways, just writing something down.
Yeah, hell yeah, dude. Well, do you have any other like questions for me about any of this stuff so far?
I mean, I have a bunch, but I think just trying to do a sigil is a good start. I guess one thing I am curious about is just like maybe the ethics involved with this. Like we kind of mentioned it sometimes, but like it seems like you could do really unethical things if you wanted to. Like, or is that the kind of stuff that usually comes back to get you? Like in the end, like
That's an
any
interesting
thoughts on
question. Yeah.
the ethical nature of this stuff? Like I
Yeah.
know it, like we're not like super ethical people, but there's a line that shouldn't be crossed, when in your dealings with other people.
What do you mean we're not super ethical people? I mean, like...
Oh, I just mean like me and you. We're not religious. We don't have
I
a
don't know.
code of ethics that we
I
subscribe
consider
to.
myself to be incredibly ethical. I don't need a fucking religion to scare me into doing the right fucking thing. I do it because I fucking want to. Like, I don't know. Or what I think is the right thing, I guess. I don't know. But
Yeah,
like...
maybe I didn't phrase that very well. I mean,
Sorry, I'm all defensive now. Like, how dare
I'm
you?
super ethical as well. Like I don't do bad things either, but it's just kind of like the golden rule, like
Sure.
that there are codes of ethics that have been codified into.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that is mentioned in a lot of texts. I would say that in general, magic, like other tools, can be used for a variety of purposes based on your intent and based on the outcome. Is it good or is it bad? I mean, the ethics of sorcery and of magic and all that stuff is definitely something that we're going to be talking about on this show, because I do think it's interesting and important, and there are some different philosophies out there, and I do love philosophy, so we're definitely going to be getting into all of that. But I would say, yeah, in general, like, in terms of like what goes around comes around, some people do believe that. Like, some people, there's like the Wiccan belief that what you put out there will return to you threefold. I'm not sure if I agree with that or not, in terms of my own experience, but I do think it's interesting, and so that is one belief system. There's the idea of karma, but it's much more complicated than we actually have an understanding of it as Westerners typically.
I think something that's just kind of like I guess, scary about the idea of magic, that's probably always been this way, is that, we have these judiciary systems that, have laws and stuff that if you commit a crime, you're going to be held responsible for it, right? But if you're able to do stuff like with magic, and you can never be pinned on you, right? Like, then it undermines our whole system, like, of order and of law. I think that's kind of like this one of the, I don't know, stigmas against it, or
I could see that for sure. I think that the way I would respond to that statement would be to say that, well, we already have all these like super fucking rich people that the laws don't seem to apply to. So maybe it's okay that there's something to even the playing field a little bit or something. I don't know, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
just saying. But yeah, I think we should
very-
definitely talk more about this. I'm super into it.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so we started this episode like kind of asking like, what is magic? What do we think it is? And I'm gonna go ahead and end by asking it again. Like, all right, so if this stuff actually works, which by the way it fucking does, by what mechanism does it function? Like, how does magic operate? Here's a spoiler. I'm not sure. But I'm very excited to start getting into that topic on the next episode, where we're going to be investigating like the different magical models. Is it spirits or psychology or something altogether more exotic? We're going to be getting into all that, as well as like some more tech to try out and some pitfalls to avoid. More stuff in future episodes will also include like crafting magical items, divination, servitors, exploring different paths, traditions, hearing from people about their personal practices, and a bunch more shit. So I'm super stoked for all of that.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, dude. So, all right, we didn't really get a chance to get into it today, but there's like a bunch of different things that creators can integrate and use, which are Chaos Magick principles. Stuff that you can use as an artist for your work if you want to. So this is something that I'm pretty into. So I suspect I might be talking about this stuff a lot too. I have an ongoing project involving the combination of sigils with art and language that I made an Instagram account for. So like I'll put a link in the description for that in case you guys want to check that out. There's also going to be a list of all the books that I talked about in this episode, so don't forget to look there in case you are curious. And if you have questions, please email me at luxoccultpod@gmail.com or catch me on the social media or whatever. I'm slowly but surely working on like trying to figure out how to use all that shit. Anyway, any last words, my friend?
Oh no, thanks for having me. I definitely want to try out some of this stuff, and I'm excited to see how it goes.
Hell yeah, I know. I'm stoked to have you back next time when we try to investigate how magic works, or the different ways of looking at it, at least.
Hell yeah.
All right, so I'm going to leave y'all with a poem that was produced using the cut-up method of writing. So what this entails is, as the name suggests, like cutting up a piece of writing and rearranging it into something new. So often, strange truths can be revealed this way. I asked Calliope for inspiration and performed some automatic writing, and then fed what I had written into a cut-up generator that I found online. So, once again, thank you so much for listening to Lux Occult. Cheers, everybody. Take care. And now, please enjoy this sacred nonsense. Real never for glean I get good, just wants none known but us. You're it, your stars, you, the laughing, it's happening, not as the helpless seems. Sweet side, and that's you, and this, while to always hermit bestow goddess, beg you speaks to classified fair, but far go voluptuous eyes. Until for waiting, you're like sea, pleading demeanor, let her listen, and at wide, then look for what if, and gleam you see, is the chase as of willing. Guess whatever I am more, the slideshow your sweet ears laughing were. Soon you, little wizard, it's sit looking, you open patient bitch, to you, the memories ugly overlook. Is hills previously to, back me when it just acknowledge moment you in generosity. She pour a one head, one little now two dog and myself things too into this and say join what she into worm might look real drown to go. Cheers.